Chapter 65 Jace Beleren. Dawn was breaking on Dominaria as Jace, Chandra, and Jaya planeswalked in. The first two had tracked down the third to find out where Kaya had gone to kill Liliana Vess. Thus confronted, Jaya had reluctantly agreed to show them the way to Liliana's ancestral home in Caligo. Jace could tell Chandra was still mad at her mentor. Chandra understood what Jaya had been trying to do, how she'd been trying to protect Chandra, but she didn't like it one bit. "I expected more trust from you at this point," Chandra said. "More respect." Jaya had not responded. Now, the three of them arrived at the mansion in time to find a number of peasants gathered around a funeral pyre. Jace shouted at his companions, "Stop the fire!" He'd caught a glimpse of Liliana's distinctive dress. Jaya and Chandra quickly absorbed the flames, extinguishing the pyre and the already charred corpse. For it was a corpse. Jace did a quick telepathic read. There was no brain function. She had been dead for at least an hour. But maybe it's not her. Upon witnessing the pyromancer's power, most of the crowd had scattered, but an old man with a white beard and an old peasant woman rushed forward. "What are you doing?" he demanded frantically. "You must let us burn Liliana Vess' body to prevent her from rising again," she pleaded. Minutes later, the three planeswalkers had learned the whole story from the old couple, Karina and Georges Temoin, how Liliana had returned to Caligo and forced the locals into servitude, how the servants had been rescued by Kaya and Teyo and a young woman. "Young woman?" Jace asked Jaya telepathically. "Kaya's friend, Rant," Jaya explained. "Not everyone can see her. I couldn't see her, but I gather some people can." Karina Temoin continued. "When Liliana's power turned against her, she was revealed to be an old woman made young by magic. I saw it with my own eyes, and at the end there, her power. It was tormenting her, torturing her. That's when Mistress Kaya stabbed her, as a mercy." A suspicious Chandra asked, "Do we believe this?" Jace responded darkly, "They believe it, sincerely. I'm reading both of them, and they're telling the truth, at least the truth as they know it." And Jaya, "So, you have doubts? Why?" "Excuse me if I'm having a little trouble accepting that Liliana is actually..." Suddenly Jace rushed over to the unlit pyre, to the only partially burned purse on the corpse's belt. It was empty. "Ha!" Smiling now, he turned back to Karina and Georges with an air of triumph. "Where is it?" "You mean that fancy gold-linked veil?" Karina asked, perplexed. "Yes. Mistress Kaya and the others took it with them. The boy Teyo had it trapped inside a glowing sphere of light. They said they'd need it as proof." Jace literally staggered back. He turned around and stared at the charred remains of Liliana Vess. Because this is her. Liliana is dead. He knew she'd never willingly part with the chain veil. The phrase "over her dead body" came involuntarily and heartbreakingly to mind. Chandra said aloud, "Liliana couldn't give it up without dying. Those were the rules, right?" "The rules wouldn't matter if she was already dead," Jaya said grimly. Jace saw Chandra take this in, watched as it slowly became a reality for her as it just had for him. A couple of tears ran down her face. He wondered why there were none running down his own. Karina seemed to take offense. Forgetting her fear, she reprimanded the pyromancer. "How can you shed tears over the curse of the House of Vess?" Chandra wheeled on the woman, flames dancing about steaming eyes. "Don't tell me who to mourn!" Karina took a few steps back, and her husband wrapped his arms around her protectively. There was a moment of danger, a possibility of things turning ugly fast, but Chandra's wrath seemed to simply drain away, as if she no longer had the energy to sustain it. The fire in her eyes died. "I'm so tired," she said weakly. Jaya attempted to put an arm around her. "Chandra!" But her protege pushed her off, snapping, "If I want comfort, I'll get it from my real mother. Thank you very much." Turning her back on a stunned Jaya, Chandra said to Jace, "I'll see you back on Ravnica. I have one more thing I promised to do there." Then, to the accompanying gasps of the Temoins, Chandra planeswalked away in fire. Jaya sighed. She was tired too. "Well, my work here is done," she said sardonically. "I think I'll go to Regatha for a few days to rest before meeting up with Teferi, Ajani, and Khan. If you need me, that's where I'll be." Then, as an afterthought, she added, "But don't need me." What could Jace do? He nodded, and then she too planeswalked away in flames. By this time, the old couple was quite literally shaking in their shoes. Jace said, "Don't worry, you've done nothing wrong. Go ahead, reignite the funeral pyre. It's time." Jace watched Liliana burn, staying to the bitter end. He found he couldn't cry for her, or for himself. He was just numb. When only ashes remained, Jace telekinetically spread them across the morass. "You're free, Liliana. Finally free. Finally home." Jace desperately needed Vraska. He returned to Ravnica. Chapter 66. Anna Ayora. She trudged up the lane in ill-fitting shoes. "If I get a blister, someone's going to die for it." There was the sign, hanging from the roof. The Fiddler's Inn. No actual words, of course, just the crude, wooden carving of a goblin child playing a violin. Underwhelming. She went up to the gate and took a deep breath before entering. Then she unlatched it and proceeded across a small courtyard, containing a few empty wooden tables and benches, and a bit of broken glass. At the inn's front door, she took another deep breath, turned the knob, and proceeded inside. The door slapped across a dented bell hung from the doorpost by a thin strip of iron. Its off-pitch ding summoned an old goblin from the back room. He honked his large nose in a handkerchief, and by this time, the woman felt mildly blessed the goblin used one at all. Still, try not to touch anything. Without a word, he climbed up onto a stool behind the front desk and handed her the registry to sign. She noticed that most of the other signatures were simply X. Obviously, it's a high-class joint with a high-class clientele. Of course, given how she was currently dressed, like a Caligo peasant, she probably fit right in. With some reluctance, she picked up the frayed quill, dipped it in the leaky inkwell, and signed the registry. Anna Ayora. Anna Ayora? The goblin stuffed the soiled handkerchief behind his large pointed ear, stuck 2 ink-stained fingers in his mouth, and whistled. Minutes later, Anna was being escorted up the stairs to her room by a small yellowish-green goblin. She had no luggage. "Not a spirit gem? Or a chain veil to my name?" She did have a minuscule diamond, allowing her to tip the young goblin well, but not so well as to attract any undue attention. The door soon shut, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts, which weren't exactly fantastic company at the moment. She wondered why she'd picked that name. Anna, of course, was the given name of her former mentor, back when Liliana was a child on a path to becoming a healer. But she had no idea where Ayora had come from. It had just popped into her head. In any case, Liliana Vess was dead, and must remain so. And Ana Ayora was as good a name as any. So Ana Ayora looked around her new room and was not impressed. But she needed to lay low for now, which meant lowering her expectations. Besides, this particular inn wasn't exactly my choice. She remembered the ravens gathering on the roof of the house of Vess, making her anxious. She waited for the proverbial other shoe to drop, for the Raven Man to make his unwanted appearance. Meanwhile, Liliana had again lost sight of the strange young girl known as Rat. Where had she gone? Liliana quickly realized Rat hadn't gone anywhere. As the boy had warned, when Liliana's thoughts had wandered, she'd lost focus on the girl, causing her to fade from consciousness. Liliana concentrated again on where she knew the girl should be, and Rat came back into focus. Liliana had a flash of recognition then, realizing that she had actually, in those few short seconds, forgotten what Rat had looked like. Even the sound of Rat's voice was tinged with a sense of recovering something Liliana had misplaced within her mind. The girl was saying she was positive that Liliana belonged with their small group. She had convinced Teyo, not a difficult task as he gazed at Rat the way Jace once gazed at Liliana. But Rat had even convinced the older, worldlier Kaya. Nine hells, she's even halfway convinced me. Liliana felt a strange connection to Rat for some reason. Perhaps it was merely that the girl had tossed her the spirit gem that had connected her to the spirit dragon. Or maybe it was that Rat believed in Liliana with such preposterous certainty. Or maybe there is more to it. Liliana had to admit, to herself at least, that she'd held the spirit gem before, and it hadn't sent or linked Ugin to her until after she had received it from Rat. Had the girl activated it somehow? What did Ugin say? That the child sacrificed something? Kaya intruded on Liliana's thoughts then, saying, "We need to think this through. I was contacted by the guilds to kill Liliana Vess." And Rat piped in, "Well, you already killed a Liliana Vess?" Kaya and Liliana both rolled their eyes at that, then noticed their similar reactions. They perhaps had more in common than either would prefer to admit. And neither of us knows quite what to do with that knowledge. Kaya shook off that concern and said, "I don't care about the money. The guilds were paying for the hit." She then qualified her statement. "Or I don't care much about it. We don't need money. Think of all the diamonds," Rat said. "Diamonds?" Liliana asked, feeling a bit at sea. Kaya waved off the question. "The point is, it's not about the money. Not killing Liliana could hurt the Orzhov. Besides, if I don't return with proof of her death, the guilds will simply hire another planeswalker assassin to do the job." Liliana admitted, "There are plenty of those, and plenty of other planeswalkers who'd love to kill me, for their own reasons, even free of charge." Teyo hesitantly cleared his throat and suggested, What if we used the chain veil as proof? I couldn't help noticing that you were much darker when you put it on. Maybe it isn't good for your redemption?" Liliana found herself jumping to deny that the chain veil is a minor tool for focusing my power. I have no reason to give it up. Rat stated simply. "That's not true." Liliana remembered that the girl was psychic, and in a more intuitive, less intrusive way than Jace Beleren, which makes her less powerful and more dangerous. Rat looked Liliana straight in the eye. "It's not a mere tool, is it?" Liliana again found herself struggling with her answer. Finally, she blurted out, "No, it's cursed and very dangerous. Perhaps keeping the chain veil is my penance." Rat gave her the stink eye and said, "Or is that just your excuse to hold on to its power?" Which of course is perfectly true. Almost inevitably, the Onaki spirits began whispering to her then, "Vessel, this is not the time to part with us. Do not surrender the veil, but rather surrender yourself to the veil. Surrender yourself to us." That was bad enough. But then the ravens in the trees cawed, followed by the voice of the Raven Man. "Do not be a fool, Liliana. You cannot seriously be considering this." "Are you all right?" Teyo asked. She turned to the boy. He was staring at her with what might have been real concern. "Would I know real concern if I saw it?" Kaya also stared at Liliana. Rat too, once Liliana managed to refocus her back into existence. It seemed clear that they couldn't hear either the Raven Man or the spirits. The former warned, "There are dangers ahead, Liliana. I can sense them even if you cannot. Without the veil, you will surely perish." "With the veil," Liliana said out loud to both the Raven Man and her new companions, "I was ready to perish." With something akin to physical pain, Liliana began to mentally divest herself of the chain veil, which suddenly seemed like a clear first step on her path of choosing redemption over power. They were still staring at her. She said, "You're right about one thing. The veil would make excellent proof of my death. No one would ever believe that Liliana Vess would give up its power except over her dead body. Plus," Rat pointed out, "if anyone comes to Dominaria to check, they'll learn Liliana Vess did die here." Liliana removed the chain veil from the purse at her side. Even now, the temptation to don it was palpable, intense. She croaked out, "I have to admit, I've never been able to get rid of it before. When I've tried, it felt like I was dying." Rat said, "I think you have to want to, you know? Do I want to?" "No, Vessel, drink us in." "Liliana, don't be a fool." "Yes, damn it, I do want to." And just then, the spirit gem in her other hand began to glow, brighter and brighter and brighter. They all shielded their eyes. In fact, Liliana involuntarily raised the veil itself to shield her eyes. Then, with a last bright flash, the spirit gem disappeared from her hand, startling Liliana so much that she actually dropped the veil onto the patch of dead grass at her feet. And somehow, Liliana knew that she had indeed detached herself from the veil, but only after she herself made the choice to get rid of it. And yes, admittedly I had a little help from the spirit gem. Rat was staring at Liliana's empty hands. "I did it," Liliana said to reassure her. "I'm no longer connected to the veil. I can feel the difference, and thankfully I can't hear the Unaki anymore." Rat said mournfully, "But where's Mr. Egg?" "What? Oh, I don't know. It just disappeared. Perhaps it returned to Ugin." "Ugin? Never mind." "Never mind. Right." Strangely, the girl looked positively crushed. It occurred to Liliana that maybe Rat had felt the power of the spirit gem when she had held it in her hands, and maybe she liked that power a bit too much. It was probably a good thing that Mr. Egg was gone. "Last thing I want is for Rat to go down that path. My path." Even now, Liliana hardly felt like she was off the path. But maybe, just maybe, I took a step in the right direction. She hadn't been fixed. She was still very, very broken, but her soul did feel lighter. All four of them were now staring down at the veil in the grass. Kaya started to reach for it. Well, if this is going to be proof, Liliana grabbed her hand. You can't touch it, or you'll risk its curse. Well then how? Let me try, Teyo said. He cupped one hand, spread out his fingers, and created a hemisphere of light about the size of a rubber ball, or half the size of one anyway. With it, he scooped the veil and a little bit of dead grass and dirt up off the ground, and then proceeded to complete the sphere, sealing the chain veil within. Briefly, just before the sphere had fully encircled the veil, Liliana heard the Onake one last time, screaming. They clearly didn't care for the white mana flowing through Teyo's magic. Liliana warned, I wouldn't even keep it in your sphere for too long, lest it corrupt your magic. With a quick, frightened nod, Teyo acknowledged her warning. Right then, en masse, the croaking ravens flew away. All four humans turned to look, but only Liliana could hear the voice of the Raven Man echo in her mind. Our work isn't finished, Liliana. You'll see me again, and soon. Then he, or they, were gone. So, now what? Rat said cheerfully. Liliana thought that cheerfulness was perhaps a bit forced, that the girl was perhaps still mourning the loss of the spirit gem, but had made a conscious decision to move on. Liliana admired her for that. Kaya said, Teyo, Rat, I have to return with the veil to Ravnica and the guilds. Obviously I can't go with you, Liliana stated, and then looking around, nor can I stay here on Dominaria. Kaya asked, Do you know the plain of Fiora? I've been there once or twice over the last century. Rat asked, How old are you? Liliana smiled thinly and said, That's not a polite question. It was then that Kaya told her of the Fiddler's Inn in the lowlands. Lowlands? Liliana asked. The lower city of Paliano on Fiora. The three of us will meet you there in a day or so. Let me be clear. In letting you live, I have made myself responsible for anything you do now. So I warn you, Liliana, you had better be at the Fiddler's Inn when we arrive. Because if not, I'll know you weren't serious about seeking any kind of redemption. In which case, I will hunt you down and kill you for your crimes against Ravnica. Is that understood? Now standing in her mediocre lodgings, Ana Ayora tried to understand why she had come to Fiddler's Inn in the lowlands of Paliano on Fiora. It certainly wasn't because Kaya's threat had frightened her. Honestly, Liliana was more afraid of herself, and what she might do without these three to help her. And does that make any sense? After all, the Gatewatch had tried to redeem her. Gideon and Jace and Chandra had tried to redeem her. They had all failed. Well, maybe Gideon succeeded just a little. Maybe. How could Liliana Vess or Ana Ayora possibly think these three strangers had any chance at helping her? Not three strangers, actually. 4 strangers. She was forgetting to include herself, and without a doubt, she felt like a stranger to herself right now. Looking out the window, Liliana spotted a single raven in a tree. It abruptly flew off. No whispers, no threats, no cawing even. She attempted to shrug it off. Not every raven in the multiverse is a harbinger of the Raven Man. For all I know, it might have just been a crow. She shut the heavy curtains on the daylight. She suddenly felt a desperate need for sleep.